So friends, Shabbat Shalom and welcome. Let's stand for Matovu. We are page 112, service number 2. Let's sit down. Shabbat Shalom to all of you at home. I hope you've welcomed in Shabbat, offered Matovu, consecrated your living room, your kitchens, wherever you are to pray, and joining us here in the synagogue sanctuary. We're on page 112, we're service number 2, and we are particularly thinking this morning, the theme is the mystery of life, faith, doubt, how we navigate these moments in our lives. Eternal God. A mystery surrounds my life. What came before it and what lies beyond it are shrouded in darkness. But in the darkness is your presence, and in the mystery your love. No mind can grasp the splendor of your being. No tongue express the majesty of your works. Yet there are times when we sense a reality that is beyond our mortal sight. May this Shabbat be such a time for us. Help us to hear your voice, to find your image in our souls, and to be at peace.
Eloi, Eloi,
for the prayer we offer at the reunion of our souls and our bodies every morning. Baruch atah Adonai asher biyado nefesh kol chai v'ruach kol basar ish. Baruch shama v'haya ha'olam baruch hu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam hamchulal b'fi amo mushubach umfa'al b'shon chasidav v'avadav b'shvachot u'vizmarot nagadelcha v'namlichecha malkeinu yachid chei ha'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai Melech Mechulal B'Tishbachot. Top of page 116. Yiyu l'ratzon imrei fi v'hegion libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri v'goali.
Anim zamirot v'shirim erog ki elecha nafshi tarog nafshi
Please stand if you're able, choose to, for the Yishtabach as we go towards the Baruch Hu.
Yishtabach Shimcha La'ad Malkeinu Ha'el HaMelech HaGadol VaHaKadosh B'Shamayim u'Va'aretz Ki Lecha Na'eh Adonai Eloheinu V'Elohei Avoteinu Shir u'shvacha, halel v'zimra, brachot v'hodahot, me'ata ve'ad olam. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher b'shirei zimra.
We turn to page 135 for the Baruch Hu. With thanks to you all for resisting the urge to sing along with Dean. We're on the foot of the page.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamevorach. Baruch Adonai Hamevorach le'olam va'ed.
Let's sit down as we go into the prayers before the Shema. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzei or uvorech hoshech, oseh shalom uvoreh et hakol, hame'el la'aretz v'ladarim aleha barachamim, uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit, ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam b'hochma asita, melah ha'aretz kinyanecha, titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, v'al morei or she'asita. Yefaruch Selah, Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzeh Hamorot. And the second blessing, with all the apologetics of Jewish tradition in the first centuries of the Common Era, really reminding us in the face of the growing Christianity, the Christian religion, is that there is love in laws, love in Torah, love in the minutiae, the detail of Judaism. Great is your love for us, eternal God, and abundant your compassion. Our ancestors trusted in you, and you taught them the laws of life. So be gracious to us and teach us. Incline our hearts to hear your words, to know and understand, to learn and teach, and with love to uphold the truths of your Torah. Enlighten us with your teaching, make us faithful to your commandments, and wholehearted in the love and awe of your name. For in love you summon us to serve you and proclaim your unity. Baruch atah Adonai abocher b'yamo Yisrael b'yahava. Stand if you'd like for our watchword of faith. Hear, O Israel, the Eternal One is our God. The Eternal God is one.
Shema Yisrael.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Let's sit down with the words that we affirm and find true and reassuring and almost reliable, the words of Shema. Good and beautiful and true, sound established and enduring are these words now and forever. Emet she'ata hu Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu, Malkeinu melech avotenu, Yotzreinu tzur Yeshuotenu, Podenu u'matzilenu me'olam hu shamecha, ein Elohim zulatecha. Emet ata hu rishon va'ata hu acharon, ומבלעדיך אין לנו מושיע. ממצרים גלתנו אדוני אלוהינו, ומבית עבדים פתיתנו. משה ומרים ובני ישראל לך ענו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדור בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה.
שירה חדשה שיבחו גואלים, לשמך על שפת הים. יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו.
אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צבא ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו. קדוש ישראל, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Let's stand. Stand at home if you choose for the Amidah, our daily Shabbat Tefillah, and for us in the sanctuary, we're on page 140.
אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך. אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Hasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol, v'Zocher Chastei Avot v'Imahot, u'Mevi Gula Livnei v'Nehem, Lama'an Shemo B'Yahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Bezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Machaye Metim, Atah Rav Lohoshia, Mashiv HaRuach, Morid HaGeshem, Mazriach HaShemesh, Umorid HaTal. ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו, בשמי מרום ככתוב על יד נביאך.
קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו.
כבודו מלא עולם.
ברוך כבוד אדוני
ממקומך מלכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך.
ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי את ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש. בשבתך אלוהינו, מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. כי אל מלך גדול, כי אל מלך גדול, הקדוש ברוך הוא. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש.
Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. Let's sit down as we mark Shabbat. You inspired our ancestors to hallow this day for your service. And when upon its coming we pause to contemplate our life, we learn anew that we don't live by bread alone, but we also live by the spiritual nourishment we receive when we open ourselves to your influence. So we thank you for Shabbat, for the opportunity it offers to enhance the quality of our lives. We thank you for the joy and peace it offers. May our worship help us to take into our hearts its message of holiness and consecrate all our days by devotion to what is true, beautiful, and good.
ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. השבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו שבת. חמדת ימים אותו קראת שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת.
Baruch atah Adonai Makadesh HaShabbat. We're on page 144 as we do every week, this prayer of hoping that our prayers and our murmurings and whatever we express here as part of our congregation is effective or binds us together. Eternal God, Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu, B'yamcha Yisrael u'tefilatam b'ahavat tekabel, u'tehila ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha, Baruch atah Adonai, she'otecha levadacha b'yera na'avod. Modim anachnu lach, she'ata hu Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu le'olam va'ed. Tzur hayenu, magen yishenu, ata hu lador vador, nodeh lecha נספר תהילתך, על חיינו המסורים בידיך, על נשמותינו הפקודות לך, ועל ניסיך שבכל יום עמנו, ועל נפלותיך וטובותיך, שבכל עת ערב ובוקר וצהריים. ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך ולך נאה להודות.
Shalom, Tova, Uvracha. Sim Shalom, Tova, Uvracha. Sim Shalom.
Recording in progress.
Ova, Uvracha, Sim Shalom, Tova, Uvracha. Chilga chesed, Chilga chesed, v'rachamim. Chilga chesed, Chilga chesed, v'rachamim, v'rachamim. Sim Shalom. Sim Shalom, Tova,
Ata Adonai Oseh HaShalom. Now, in this moment of silent prayer, I have a reflection, contemplation for you. Under your seats in the sanctuary, you have this contemplation for those who do not define their belief as a belief in God. I hope everyone has access to one. And for those of you at home, I am going to screen share so that you have an opportunity to read this, to reflect on it as we take a moment for ourselves, for prayer and for contemplation. And really for you to see whether you feel yourself falling into this camp or otherwise. I said that the portion this week, Shalach, which I'll mention a little later, not only includes this extraordinary story of the spies and this mercurial response by the children of Israel, but it also includes the commandment to wear a talit. And it made me consider and reflect upon how we choose as Jews to use items that might work as reminders, as an aid memoir to our faith or our Jewish life or our Jewishness. And where we are, this whole year, this past 15 months of us transforming our community to be a community online as well as in the building. And here we are managing both at the same time. And where does faith fit in for us? So I said later Sheila and I will talk and we'll encourage you to share your thoughts about it. We are never the worse for asking ourselves, challenging ourselves to think about where we stand around faith and doubt and belief, and certainly the portion this week encourages us to do so. So take a moment during silent prayer to read this. So we'll have a slightly longer pause, and those of you at home, I hope you're able to see it on the screen if you choose to.
עושה שלום במרומו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל בני אדם. הוא עושה שלום במרומו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל בני אדם. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
Thank you, Franklin and Dean. We turn now to Kriyat Torah, the center of our Shabbat morning service, page 481. So we will open the ark, but we're realizing that there are too many people on the bima safely to take out the scroll. So we've already got it here ready, but we will open the ark so that we are able to see the scrolls and feel the joy of being in our congregation together.
אין כמוך האלוהים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך. מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום.
And here with the scroll, the words of which we'll hear in a moment. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, קדוש שמו.
Gadlul Adonai iti onoromama shamo yachdav.
לך אדוני הגדולה, הגבורה והתפארת, והנצח וההוד. כל בשמיים ובארץ, לך אדוני הממלכה והמתנשא בכל רוב.
Let's sit down and let me introduce our Torah portion. Our Torah portion is Shalach Lecha, the portion known as the spies portion. Shalach Lecha, send out for yourselves spies to check out the land and identify if this is manageable for the people to go in and conquer. Put aside your political sense of land and conquering and conquest and get into the story of how these 12 tribes are sent out. The two leaders, Joshua and Caleb, they come back with the most dramatic report to say that the land is simply extraordinary. There are giants that live there, and the fruit is so enormous. It is so fertile there that the grapes are the size of grapefruit, and clusters have to be carried by 2 men to come out. Now, instead of what they've seen, making them feel rather excited about moving to this land, it has the reverse effect. Except for Joshua and Caleb, the rest of the spies are terrified. They infect and pass on and permeate their fear and lack of confidence to the rest of the people, who really kind of go a bit bonkers, and they just rebel. They cry out. They refuse to move. They say, if only we had died, which Rashi is sure means We wish we had died in the land of Egypt, to have been brought into this dangerous situation. And you can imagine God, who doesn't take long to get angry. We saw that anger last week. God responds by saying, what is the fuss about? I will give them something to be angry about. And indeed, Talmudic Midrash says that was the moment when God anticipated the fall of the temple and the moment of Tisha B'Av, the fall of the first temple, saying, you're crying about this? About a little bit of fear of who's in the land, of a lack of confidence in yourself. The piece just before that we're going to hear has the immortal words, we looked like grasshoppers to them, and so we look like to ourselves. And of all the commentary on this, that is the piece that is considered the very worst, that it's okay to be scared how you are seen by others, but to have that lack of confidence in yourself is not okay. The piece that we're going to hear laid by our own fabulous John Rubenstein, bar mitzvah tutor par excellence, gets to come in this morning. We get to hear him laning from this. Truly is this section where God is irritated, almost ready to answer the people's desire. If only they would wish they died, why not do it for them? We see the people, let us appoint a head, a new head over us. Again, Rashi's sure they're not really talking about an alternative Moses or Aaron. It is idolatrous. They are wanting a new God. And yet the text keeps reminding us. We first hear this clause in the book of Exodus, that God is slow to anger and quick to forgive. We hear this, we use these words on Yom Kippur, El Melech, Rechem. I will come back to the Hebrew for that. This is nonetheless a merciful sense of the God that we have. But I want to take this moment, as I did last night, to just link this Torah portion this morning to a decision that's been made by liberal Judaism that is going public this week with a huge piece in the Sunday Times tomorrow, that liberal Judaism has made a decision to join the Religious Alliance for Dignity in Dying. It's been a long time coming that liberal Judaism, alongside many other religious movements, have felt that to campaign for the small change in the law, and I use these words carefully knowing there are lawyers amongst us, a small change in the law to give the right for the terminally ill, mentally competent adult with very serious safeguards in place within to choose an assisted death if they feel their suffering is too hard to bear. And as you can imagine, Jewish tradition has much to say on this. And although liberal Judaism has decided to join the alliance, it doesn't mean each individual liberal Jew might feel like that, or indeed it says nothing about us as a synagogue. We're not joining the alliance. But it's an interesting issue, of course, around faith and doubt, and around what it is to both value the sanctity of life, the mystery of life, and how we navigate suffering, and when we feel it is within our right as individuals to remove that suffering or not. How much of medical intervention are we able to take part of, and how much not? I'm really interested by the words of Helen Keller in our Siddur this morning on page 300, if you would like to look at. It need not discourage us if we are full of doubts. Healthy questions keep faith dynamic. In fact, unless we start with doubts, we cannot have a deep-rooted faith. One who believes lightly and unthinkingly has not much of a belief. So this wrestling with what it means to be alive, what it means to look after each other, is very much part of, or for me, just in line with the questions and the challenges the Torah portion offers us today. There is a story that is much repeated in Talmud and then in Midrashim following about the death of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, known as Rabbi. When he is near to death, his students, his disciples, gather to pray for his recovery. Almost manically. They don't leave his home. They pray for days and days. As he gets iller and his death looks like unavoidable. His maidservant, who is caring for him, who at first is sympathetic to their efforts, soon realizes that he is beyond the point of healing, and the time for his death is close. And she observes and considers that the prayers serve only to prolong his suffering. She therefore prays that Rabbi will die quickly. But when she sees that the students will not cease their own prayers to keep him alive, she casts a glass vessel from the roof of the house to the ground. The startling sound interrupts the prayers, and in that moment he dies. This story is taken, as you can imagine, deeply, profoundly in Jewish tradition of what it says about removing an impediment from someone's death if they are already at that point. So I invite you, take this home, talk about it over your lunch today. Consider religious movements, getting involved and thinking about this in terms of sanctity of life, in terms of the right of an individual. It is not about suicide nor euthanasia, but the right of an individual to make that decision for themselves and to choose when their suffering becomes overwhelming. So thinking of this portion and thinking of each individual, and we see the whole children of Israel, if only we had died, that all of us have that sense of our own mortality and what it means. So delighted this morning that our own John will read from Torah and James will come up as an aliyah to bless the words of Torah. So just a moment of choreography as I'm going to call up James, so John, maybe you come up, and so you're up here. Then I'll call up James. I will back up away from the desk, and then James, if you hover on the steps while John is reading Torah, then hopefully the space is safe and good for us. Just finding your place again, John, as it is rolled off. Atisa, the raising of the voice of wailing. Ya'amod, Chaim ben Baruch Halevi, levarech et haTorah. Baruch Adonai Barach leolam va'ed. Amen. Stay here, James.
ותישא כל העדה, ויתנו את כל העם, ויבכו העם בלילה ההוא. וילונו על משה ועל אהרון כל בני ישראל, ויאמרו עליהם כל העדה, לו מהתנו בארץ מצרים, במדבר הזה לו מהתנו, ולמה אדוני מביא אותנו אל הארץ הזאת לנפול בחרב, נשינו וטפנו יהיו לבז. הלא טוב לנו שוב מצרימה, ויאמרו איש אל אחיו, ניתנה הראש ונשובה מצרימה. ויפול משה ואהרון על פניהם לפני כל קהל הדעת בני ישראל, ויהושע בן נון וכלב בן יפונה מן התרים את הארץ, קרעו בגדיהם. ויאמרו אל כל עדת בני ישראל לאמור, הארץ אשר עברנו בה לתור אותה, טובה הארץ מאוד מאוד. אם חפץ בנו אדוני והביא אותנו אל הארץ הזאת, ונתנה לנו ארץ אשר היא זבת חלב ודבש, אך באדוני אל תמרודו ואתם אל תראו את עם הארץ כי לחמנו הם שר צילה מעליהם ואדוני איתנו אל תיראום ויאמרו כל העדה לרגום אותם באבנים וכבוד אדוני נראה באוהל מועד אל כל בני ישראל ויאמר אדוני אל משה עד אנה ינאצוני העם הזה ועד אנה לא יאמינו בי בכל האותות אשר עשיתי בקרבו הכנו בדבר והורישנו ואעשה אותך לגוי גדול ועצום ממנו ויאמר משה אל אדוני ושמעו מצרים כי העלית וכוחך את העם הזה מקרבו ואמרו אל יושב הארץ הזאת שמעו כי אתה אדוני בקרב העם הזה אשר עין בעין נראה אתה אדוני וענניך עומד עליהם ובעמוד ענן אתה הולך לפניהם יומם ובעמוד אש לילה והמתה את העם הזה כאיש אחד ואמרו הגויים אשר שמעו את שמעך לאמור מבלתי יכולת אדוני להביא את העם הזה אל הארץ אשר נשבע להם וישחטם במדבר ועתה יגדל נא הכוח אדוני כאשר דיברת לאמור אדוני ערך אפיים ורב חסד נשא עוון ופשע ונקה לא ינקה פוקד עוון אבות על בנים על שילשים ועל ריבעים סלח נא לעוון אז העם הזה כגודל חסדך וכאשר נשאת לעם הזה ממצרים ועד הנה ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדברך. Okay, so and the congregation raised their voices and they cried through the night. And just for context, this occurs just after the spies report back and say that although the land is great and fantastic, giants inhabit the land, we are like grasshoppers to them, we feel we're grasshoppers ourselves, we can't take the land. And in response to that, we have this first verse, and the people raised their voice and essentially whinged. And they crowded around Moses and Aaron and complained and said to them, it would have been better had we died in Egypt or in this desert. And why did God bring us here into this land simply to fall by the sword and for our women, our wives, and our little ones to be taken into captivity? Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? And they looked and said to each other, let us select another head and return back to Egypt. And at that, Moses and Aaron fell on their faces in front of the entire congregation of Israel. But Joshua bin Nun And Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, among those who scouted out the land, rent their clothes in grief. And they said to the congregation, the land which we passed through and which we scouted out is a good land. It's a very, very good land. And if God wishes it and brings us, he will bring us into this land, and he will give us this land, a land full of milk and honey. But do not rebel against him, against God, and do not fear the people that live in that land. Because it says here, Ki lachmenu hem, because they are our bread. The way I look at it is when they say we can have them for lunch. Their protection has been removed, and God is with us. Do not fear them. And at that, the congregation in response gathered around and intended to stone them to death. But at that point, God in all his glory appears at the tent of meeting, the tabernacle, in front of all the congregation. And God says to Moses, how long do I have to take this provocation from them? These people that don't believe in me, and in all the wondrous deeds that I have performed in their midst. I will smite them with a plague and annihilate them. And instead I will make you to a great nation, even greater than these people. And then Moses becomes a pacifier at this point. You know, this is a guy that's lost his temper, and he's trying to calm him down, because it's not just a guy who's lost his temper, it's God who's lost his temper, so the damage can be quite serious. So Moses says to God, the Egyptians will hear this, that with all your greatness and force and capability, you brought these people out from amongst their midst, you brought them out of Egypt. And they shall say to the people who dwell in the land that you intend to give to the Israelites, we heard that you are a God that dwells in the midst of these people, see them eye to eye, that your cloud stands over them, and that a cloud walks in front of them during the day when they march, and a pillar of fire leads them in the night. But yet you kill these people as if it was just with the ease, as if it was killing just one person. And these people will say, this is a God that is incapable of bringing the people to the land which he has promised to give them, and instead he slaughters them. But now, rise over and above yourself. In other words, calm down. And do as you have said. You are a God that's slow to anger. But you heard Rebecca say that God loses his temper quite a few times. In fact, I had one of my bat mitzvah students say to me the other day that, we were reading the parasha, and she says, God really the Jewish God really loses his temper and gets angry very, very often. So I don't know if I quite agree with the idea that he's a God that's slow to anger. But anyhow, he does get angry occasionally. But he's full of mercy, and when he needs to be merciful, and he forgives transgressions and conscious crimes and cleanses, although he doesn't completely, as the Torah says, he doesn't clean completely, because he visits the sins of the fathers on the sons and on the grandsons to the third and the fourth generation, which to me seems like guilt by association, but that's another matter. So then at this point, Moses says, forgive these people in accordance with your great kindness. And as you have done several times since they left the land, you brought them out of the land in Egypt. And God said, I have forgiven them because of what you have said.
Amen. Thanks to So Erech Hapayim V'Rav Chesed Va'emet, slow to anger, full of love. John, you've given us a lot to think about with a God who seems, on the contrary, quick to anger. So we now turn to the Haftarah after Romamu, and I will address, but just a moment about the Haftarah so that we're ready to think. The Haftarah comes from the book of Joshua. I'm so delighted that Earl Abramson will be reading from the Haftarah this morning. And the book of Joshua seems to cover the historical period of the end of the 13th century, beginning of the 12th century, before the Common Era. Tradition ascribes it to Joshua, to the leader that takes over from Moses, the authorship. But we're really not really sure whether this is just a pious remembering account of what happened after Moses died and as the people came into the land. The book of Judges seems to begin with no recollection of a united people conquering a land, because we see tribes and divisions all the way through the book of Judges that follows. But in this particular section that echoes so beautifully the piece of Torah that we heard today, we hear Caleb, one of the spies, the one that worked with Joshua, the one that was reliable, the truer to God, who is recollecting what happened as an old man and recollecting what he experienced. So as we dress the Torah, and we'll go straight into Romamu. When you're ready, Dean will back up to the back of the bima and give you space.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'neviim tovim v'ratzav b'divreihem v'nemarim b'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocheh b'torah Moshe avdo u'v'Yisrael amo u'v'nvi'eh ha'emet v'tzedek. Then the people of Judah came to Joshua at Gilgal, and Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Canaanite said to him, "You know what the Eternal said to Moses the man of God in Kadesh Barnea concerning you and me. I was 40 years old when Moses the servant of the Eternal sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land. And I brought him word again, as it was in my heart. But my brothers who went up with me made the heart of the people melt. Yet I wholly followed the Eternal my God." And Moses swore on that day, saying, "Surely the land on which your foot has trodden shall be an inheritance for you and your children forever, because you have wholly followed the Eternal my God. And now, behold, the Eternal has kept me alive, just as he said, these 45 years since the time that the Eternal spoke this word to Moses, while Israel walked in the wilderness. And now, behold, I am this day 85 years old, and I am still as strong today as I was in the day that Moses sent me. My strength now is as my strength was then, for war and for going and coming. So now give me this hill country of which the Eternal spoke on that day. For you heard on that day how the Anakim were there with great fortified cities. It may be that God will be with me, and I shall drive them out just as the Eternal sent. Then Joshua blessed him, and he gave Hebron to Caleb the son of Jephunneh for an inheritance. Therefore Hebron became the inheritance of Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Canaanite to this day, because he wholly followed the Eternal, the God of Israel. Now the name of Hebron formerly was Kiriath Arba. Arba was the greatest man among the Anakim, and the land had rest from war. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Sor kol olamim, Tzadik b'kol hadorot, El haneman, haomer v'oseh, hamedaber u'mekayim, shechol devarav emet v'tzedek, על התורה ועל עבודה ועל נביאים ועל יום השבת הזה שנתת לנו, אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת, על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כוחה, תמיד לעולם ועד. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Thank you, Earl, and we look forward to you, Ben, in a few weeks following with your bar mitzvah, doing exactly as your dad just did. We are on page 484 as we move into the prayers for the community. I am going to invite you, Andrea, just to stay there and to just read as loudly as you can. Thank you.
Eternal God, we ask your blessing on our Queen Elizabeth and all the royal family, as well as those who govern our country. Guide them and all who govern our country with a spirit of wisdom and compassion, so that they care for the citizens and the stranger, and bring benefit to all the inhabitants of our country and the world. Bless all our brothers and sisters of the house of Israel. Bless our congregation and all its members. Be with those who seek your presence and all who are in need of healing, spiritual or physical. Let them know that you are near to comfort and sustain them. May peace exist in the state of Israel soon and in our time. May you, eternal God, grant blessing to her, established as an age-old dream and home to the oppressed. May its leaders and citizens be inspired with a faithfulness to the aims of its founders, and may the country be imbued with the prophetic ideals of liberty and justice always. May this Shabbat renew our energy to build and sustain a better future, and to deepen our gratitude of so much that surrounds us. And let us say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Andrea. You made those words very real for us. So for those that are already standing, stay standing. For those who aren't and would like to stand, for the prayer for the new month. Again, I feel our service this morning is so permeated by new melodies, and we are the richer for them.
Yehi ratzon milfanecha, Adonai Eloheinu, v'Elohei avoteinu. שתחדש עלינו את החודש הבא ותיתן לנו חיים ארוכים, חיים של שלום, חיים של טובה, חיים של חיים של פרנסה, חיים של קינוח
Rosh Chodesh Tammuz Yeh B'Yom Shishi, the new month of Tammuz, will begin this coming Friday. May it be the will of the Holy One ever to be praised, that it bring for us, for the whole house of Israel, life and peace, happiness and joy, deliverance and consolation. And let us say, Amen. Yahallelu et Shem Adonai, ki nizgav shemo levado. Ki lekach tov natati lechem, torati al ta'azovu.
It's Chaim Hi, Lamachazikim Ba, V'tom Eveha Meusha, Derachim Adorchenu, V'chol Netivotecha, Shalom, Hashivenu Adonai, Elecha v'nashuva, Chodesh Yameinu kegedem, Chodesh Yameinu
So I realise there's a slight irony to today of me talking about the rest of Shabbat and really inviting you to engage intellectually and to be really thoughtful this morning, both in terms of what I've shared with you about us keeping abreast of what liberal Judaism's deciding, and I can't imagine there is one of us who doesn't have strong feelings on this issue, but also about faith and doubt. And at the beginning of the week, before we knew that this announcement was going to come this weekend, Sheila and I, Sheila, if I invite you to come up onto Dean, just here, we were going to be in conversation together, so just by...
Okay.
yeah, I think that's okay. For you there, that Sheila and I decided that we talk a great deal about faith and doubt and where we all are in our lives and how we are, particularly this past year when we haven't been together in the actuals, in the building of the sanctuary together, and what does that mean? How does it affect our prayer and our faith? And I really felt that this weekend it would be an opportunity for us to talk about it and to consider this text that I shared with you earlier about where we're at and how we experience faith, doubt, both as liberal Jews and just members of our congregation. So I'm just looking at the text again to share with those at home. But while I do that, I wanted to read it again to allow us to have an opportunity to hear these words. And I really feel that they capture something very strongly for many of us of how we view our attachment to our faith, to our prayers. I always think of our own Monty Bixer, who talks about believing, about being a belonger and not a believer, but yet nonetheless he feels very attached to prayer. So I think all of us have had these inconsistencies within us. I know that the world is a place of contradiction. If I did not, why would I, one who does not define myself as a believer in God, come here today to pray with my fellow people? It's to be with them that I've come. It's because I believe in them, in us, and in what we can create and in what we can destroy that I am driven here, out of a feeling of need to be with and worship with them. If it were merely out of habit or out of guilt, I should quickly abandon this practice. Although every day is a day for fighting the good fight to perfect the world, although every day is a day to meditate and to struggle, we also need times set aside to come together as a community and to pause and celebrate our struggles and meditations. At this moment, I am gathered here with others, having just said prayers apparently addressed to a transcendent, anthropomorphic even, God. Every day of my life, I employ traditions of speech which at the same time reflect and do not reflect the reality I understand before me. In the morning, I say the sun rises, and in the evening, I say the sun sets, knowing very well that the sun neither rises nor sets, because the earth is rotating. I use these words nevertheless because they describe the feelings of dawn and dusk. In the same way, I still pray to the eternal power of our parents in the Amidah, because no matter how mistaken from my particular point of view, remember these aren't my words, these are the words from the Panay or Siddur, Reconstructionist Siddur. From my particular point of view was the content of Abraham and Sarah's belief. I still appreciate the power of their belief and what it accomplished through time. And I cannot consider myself superior to those who call their belief a belief in God just because they believe in something without proof. After all, I believe in people, and I act as if we have a hope for the future. And during a time where we worry about the destruction of our planet, such a belief may have even less foundation than a belief in God. So on this day, I will allow myself to say that the sun sets and rises, and allow myself to say Adonai and Eloheinu, not because they are the real things of the universe, but because they are real symbols of eternal powers in which the universe is one, and because these names reflect the feelings of awe generated by the contemplation of the infinite and the infinitesimal, feelings generated in contemplation of and interaction with the cosmos, with people, with art, with history, which is yet ours to make or to end. So Sheila, you and I have discussed this much, and I wanted to invite you as our life president, who thinks a great deal about prayer and coming together and this community, to share your thoughts. And then we thought we would invite those of you in the sanctuary to share yours. Those of you at home could pop something in the chat maybe, but and then I will repeat anything you say if it can't be heard. But hopefully we might be able to allow it to be heard. Sheila.
Well, I've always had a problem from the age of about 10 about anthropomorphism. You know, when I was taught by my parents to pray, it was kind of to my grandfather. You know, always kind, but not always kind, but I was taught always kind, with a beard, you know, a robe. And by the time I realised that I was praying for things that I was actually told not to pray for, I was supposed to pray only to say thank you, but I used to pray quietly for things I wanted, and I didn't get them. And I started to think about God who gives if you pray and if you're good. So I began to think I'll make a few deals with God. If I promise to do, well, let's, for example, tidy my room every single day, maybe I'll get a new bike. Well, I did tidy my room every day. I didn't actually get a new bike, unfortunately. But the thing was, by tidying my room every day, I felt a bit better. And actually, it stopped my mother nagging me. So that was quite good. You know, I forgot about, in a way, I forgot about the deal that I'd made, that I had done my bit, but God hadn't done his bit. So it's sort of, I'm still a bit like that. I don't make deals with God, but I still think that sometimes promising yourself you'll do something you don't really want to do actually makes you feel better, and it's better for everyone around you. And I'm very aware of a whole period in my life when actually God didn't mean very much to me. But then, and I had to start thinking non-anthropomorphically. I had to think, this is not a human being with eyes and ears and a voice. This is something really spiritual. And that took a lot of thinking and a lot of movement. And how I got to it, I think, was by doing the community, for example. You know, I was, well, our family were one of the founder members of this community, and
so Sheila, I'm going to ask you there that...
To stop.
No, but the writer of this prayer, and it's very strange, it has been shared amongst different progressive communities a great deal, and we don't know the name of the person who wrote it, but it ended up being in the Panei or Siddur, which is Reconstructionist and Renewal Judaism in the States. But he or she talks of what it means to be part of a community, and that for them is why prayer is meaningful. And
that's right.
So
that's where I'm coming to. Yeah, very much that prayer is meaningful. And another thing I think is you may be saying words that you don't really believe, but you realise that all over the world, at the same time as you give or take time differences, people are saying the same words that you're saying. So there's a community of millions doing what you're doing. That, to me, is one of the reasons why anthropomorphism, it doesn't affect me anymore, because I think once I realised that God wasn't my grandfather, or didn't look like my grandfather, or maybe did, I don't know, if he was Eastern European. Anyway, once I got through that, I think it becomes easier to say what is good rather than, well, there's no proof, so how can I say these prayers? I don't care anymore that there's no proof.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. Yeah, thank you. You've captured that notion of mystery. So I just wanted to give us a moment, if anyone else in the synagogue today wanted to add a thought to that. We'll see if we can use a microphone, but otherwise we don't have so long. But we wanted either we can hear those of you at home in the chat, if you have something to share, but if there's anyone in the congregation today inside the synagogue that would like to respond to Sheila and I. Andrea, is that you?
Well, there were two things. First,
no, you can keep it. It's okay. I can hear, and I'll...
doesn't matter. The first of all, it's much easier to believe that they're not...
Okay, we won't use the microphone. You just finish what you're saying, Andrea, and I'll share it.
It's much easier to believe in this kind of non-anthropomorphic God if you have to watch lots of Doctor Who. But seriously, because you've got this idea of people not having a body, not having this. And the other thing is, it always strikes me as a bit cheeky to sit there thinking that you're coming along and praying and if you expect to influence him. Because if he's all-knowing and all-being and all the rest of it, you're saying, you don't know what you're doing. So,
Right. So for those at home, I'm just sharing that Andrea says Doctor Who helps us around anthropomorphism and our own theologies. And also, is there something a bit chutzpahdik or cheeky about thinking that prayers will reward us? Because if we think of an omnipotent, all-knowing God, then would they be necessary? But I think for some of us, prayer is for other reasons of doing it together, of hearing those words, of recognizing the melodies and the words that Earl and James offered for us today, that's what brings us. And I think for me, and maybe someone else wants to comment on that over these past 15 months, it's been an extraordinary experience to watch our services grow, our attendance grow, that something around faith or community has become even more important during these strange months that we have lived through. I think maybe I have time for one more comment. Tamara, is your hand slightly raised? Go ahead.
I just wanted to say how much I recognise what Sheila said about how, when you tidy your bedroom every day as an act of self-discipline, as it were, then you may accrue benefits that you have not looked for or have not expected. And how much, for me, that is true about forms of Jewish observance, like Shabbat, for example. That for me, when I started even the most minimal observation of Shabbat, felt burdensome and pointless and irrational, but the process of observance does bring benefits in terms of your own well-being that you might not have anticipated, or in terms of your own understanding or your own attitude to life that you might not have anticipated. And for me, much of Jewish practice is in that sort of category of things that you may not know when you undertake them what difference they'll make to your life, but the act of practice is in its own way transformative, whether you have a faith in God or not.
Beautiful. Thank you, Tamara and Sheila, for capturing that. Tamara and Sheila are both talking of the same thing, that sometimes one does something with the hope something might happen, but actually the experience of it itself is transformative. So whether it be tidying your room or the practice of Shabbat or of being a Jew. James, as the final for David.
Just very briefly, I think it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And as Tamara was saying, it reminded me of Banana Rama's track. It ain't what you do, it's the way you do it. That thing very relevant.
Thank you. So what with Doctor Who, and James has just suggested Bananarama's track, It Ain't What You Do, It's the Way That You Do It, is about, also could be about prayer and Jewish life. Thank you. David, did it? No? Okay. So we are going to draw that to a close, but we're going to continue it, because I think what a waste for us as a community to have found ourselves gaining so much spiritually from prayer, from being together, and not talk about its effects, and how we can grow and build on it and ensure that it stays with us. So I am going to ask us to stand now for Aleinu and follow with Dean on page 520.
Aleinu leshabeach Adon hakol, Teker Elad Yotzei Bereshit, Asher sam Yakeinu leyaven et shemo, V'kol ha'adim na'amlim malchuto, Eino
turn to the Kaddish, page 524, and are particularly thinking of those in our congregation who are mourning and remembering their loved ones. We think particularly of Irma Carton, mother of Marianne Carton, of Mark Solomons, father of Brian Solomons, of Max Valens, father of Stephen Valens, of Maya and Leon Fredman, brothers of Graham Fredman, and of Marguerite Greenstone, beloved friend of the Lassman family. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing, and may we say the words of the Kaddish with them. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shamei rabbah, v'yama divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dochol beit Yisrael, bagala bisman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mevorach leolam omer maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'a v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitada v'yitalei v'yitalal shemed kudisha brichu. Leila min kol berchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechemata. Da'amiram b'yama v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shamaya. V'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael. V'imru amen. Ose shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol b'nei Adam, v'imru. Amen. So we have announcements for the first time in the building. I will back up to the back of the bima and leave you this desk tomorrow before we close our service.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and welcome to Finchley, whether you are here in the building or whether you are with us at home. Thank you to everybody who led and participated in the service, and to all of the volunteers who make it possible for us to be together. Thank you in particular, of course, to James, to John. John, it's always such a privilege and pleasure for us to be able to hear you doing what we so often hear the others that you've taught to do. To hear you laning and to hear you translating from the scroll, it really is a treat. Thank you to Earl, who's here in anticipation of Ben's bar mitzvah, which we are so much looking forward to, Ben. Thank you to Andrea. And of course, thank you to Sheila. Sheila, your words today so resonated with me as I'm here in the building for the first time in many months and thinking about what it means to pray in community. And that was really a wonderful exchange between you, so thank you for that. And I can't help myself from saying that it's wonderful to see each and every one of you here, and such a frustration not to be able to come up to everybody individually and to speak to you. But you really are a sight for sore eyes, and I think in the way that people speak of Shabbat as a little taste of heaven, to see you all here physically, even if I can't have those conversations with you, is a sort of delicious foretaste of the more relaxed community life that I know we are all looking forward to sharing together. So on to the community announcements for the week. This week, all of our normal activities, some of which we took a half-term break, but they've all resumed and they're carrying on as normal. So morning meditation, taste of Torah, delving into Judaism, coffee with the rabbi, all of those activities, you can find the references to them in the email, and they are back as usual this week. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock in Cafe Ivrea, Chris Nash will be leading a discussion on the subject, Is Liberal Judaism a Post-Halachic Religion? Which will pick up nicely on the topic of this morning's service, I think. On Tuesday at 8 p.m, the Rosh Chodesh group is meeting for a discussion, an informal discussion on the subject of, can we change? Are we capable of changing our positions on emotive issues like Brexit, eating meat, capital punishment, perhaps assisted dying? So do join the Rosh Chodesh group for that conversation. Looking a little further ahead, on Thursday, June the 17th at 7:30, Beit Midrash is going to be hosting Keshet UK. And Keshet UK is a Jewish gay rights charity. It provides tailored support for Jewish organisations to become more inclusive of LGBT plus people and their families. And of course, that's an issue that's been dear to the heart of this synagogue for a long time, and there's still more for us to learn, and we can still do better, so do join us for that. And on Saturday, the 19th of June, our annual Czech Scroll Memorial Shabbat service, which we're again very much looking forward to. So that's it for community announcements for today. It only remains for me to say Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tamara. So Adon Olam to finish, page 525.
So
you so much. I feel that tomorrow's words were so apposite when tomorrow you talked of the delicious foretaste of what's to come of us gathering to as a community when things become more relaxed. And I really know that singing is right up there as the number one. It is almost impossible to resist singing along to our fantastic musicians, but we will get there. So a final blessing for all of us. Stand if you wish. This was a blessing, and I feel as I watch different ones of you coming back into the sanctuary, this is a blessing that was offered by the outgoing watch at the temple to the incoming watch, and really captures what it means to care for our building as well as for each other. Misha shiken et shamo b'bayit hazeh hu yashkin b'nechem ahava v'achava v'shalom v'reut. May the one whose presence dwells in this house cause love and harmony, peace and friendship to dwell amongst you all. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom to you at home. We will just offer Kiddush for those that would like to stay, to just experience it and then go home to make it themselves. And then we will walk together out of the building. So over to you, Dean.
V'shamru v'nei Yisrael. I'm going to start that again.
Yeah. You've still got a Donna Lamb in your mind. Yeah.
V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, l'dorotam berit olam, beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti le'olam, ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, et ha-shamayim ve'et haaretz, uvayom hashvi, shavat vaynafash. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.